Oh, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. Welcome in to Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast, the People's podcast, the Players podcast, Prognosticators podcast, Pedialyte podcast, Papers podcast, Presidential podcast, the Pundits podcast, the only Flyers podcast. It's an old school show today. It's just me and the man who you can see on screen if you're watching on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. That's Anthony Sanfilippo, who you can find on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. How you doing there, beautiful?
Oh, it's good to see you again, Russell. It's been a day. Been a day or two, right? Huh?
A week or so.
Yeah, I've been busy. It's my fault. It's my fault. We're a little late here getting this together.
But it is your fault, and that's okay. I'm not gonna hold it against you. I'm not gonna say.
I got to do my theater thing, and I got another show coming, and I'm just holding auditions. 114 people auditioned for me.
That's good old Anthony. Good old Anthony. He's that real thespian over there. Look at him.
That's unbelievable.
Look at that
anyway,
mug.
so I got a little tied up a little bit with that, but now that's almost past me, and we can kind of get back into the swing of things here.
So our dear friend Bundy is off promoting the International Ice Wars, Ice Wars International, which we are very excited about.
Yes,
he is. I don't know if I've ever seen him as excited as he is to make that debut on the commentary team. Remember, you can find that on Fight TV. We had those guys on a couple of weeks ago for a fun episode.
He's off
he's over the moon.
A friendly episode, huh? Or a friendly podcast. I should say.
He hasn't recorded it yet, though, so we don't want to promote until their show is up. But keep an eye out on Bundy's social. He's going to be showing up on another Flyers podcast at some point here. At least that's what he says. I believe him. Before we get into anything, wanted to plug and remind people that we have that GoFundMe set up that we talked about on the last episode for Jimmy McCrossan and Sal Raffa. It's GoFundMe.com/Jimmy and Sal. Head on over there, make a donation if you can to help with their medical bills. If you missed last week's episode, really good episode. I did see, we put a little disclaimer there on the beginning of the episode. There were some people who, it touched a little bit too close to home, couldn't get through that episode. Because it really does pull at your heartstrings, and it's a real life situation, and it's very sad, also inspirational, but sad, and so we get it. But if you get a chance, head over to GoFundMe.com/Jimmy and Sal, make a donation. Even the smallest donation is still greatly appreciated, and so there's that. Now, Ant, we have some stuff to talk about. We're beyond a week past Chuck Fletcher's press conference, so I don't want to dive too much into that. At this point, I think people's minds have been made up about how they feel about that press conference. If we want to weave in and out of that a little bit here over the next 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 3 hours or so, however long we do the show for, we can certainly go there. But the biggest thing to happen, well, there were two big things. One, the Flyers fell in the draft lottery, which I know made people very excited. My favorite thought going into this, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but there were people who kept saying that they wanted the Flyers to fall. Like, they didn't want the Flyers to be at the top 2 picks because they know that the team kind of has a propensity for screwing up that pick or for missing out on a generational talent. See Patrick Kane. Maybe not generational, but you get it. And there was that other guy that the Flyers drafted a few years ago. Ron Hextall really wanted to go after, but not the other, not the McCarr kid. He was good. He's good. Not the Heiskanen kid. He's also good. Not Pedersen. He's also good. What the hell is that kid? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But people wanted them to be lower down so the Flyers could get whoever was left. And in a draft that many believe is a 4-player draft, your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers got pick number 5. So there we go, Ant. I guess we can wrap it up. We can call it an episode. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you follow on Twitter at AntSanPhilly, at Joy on Broad, at Snow the Goalie, Facebook.com/Snow the Goalie. We will be back next. Ant, can you speak a little bit of positivity about the draft lottery into existence? Can you give people some hope that there will be good players there available at number 5? I don't expect you've done a deep scouting of like the Swedish league, but maybe there's a little bit of hope. Maybe a little bit.
No, I mean, there is a little hope. I mean, the Flyers are likely to get either the top-rated defensive prospect in this draft or the second highest-rated defensive prospect in this draft. So if that's the case, assuming they stay put at number 5, don't use it in a trade or whatever, whatever the case might be. You got to be happy with that. I mean, just because it's not a superstar caliber talent, doesn't necessarily mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. And there are two guys that that you're looking at in that draft at pick 5. There's David Durasek, who's the Czech defenseman, a little bit bigger, got a little size. Who Craig Button from TSN compared to Moritz Seider, who was one of my finalists for Calder this year. So, I mean, that's the kind of player he is, although he suffered a really bad knee injury. I forget if it was at the Olympics or World Juniors. I forget which one it was. Either way. Okay. It was one of them, and it's likely going to keep him out of action for a while. So if you do draft Durasek, you're probably looking at a slightly longer road before he gets, here. And of course, everybody's going to say, oh no, here we go again. First round draft pick of a defenseman with knee problems, Sam Morin all over again, right? So that could be the one red flag. The other one is Simon Nemec, who is a Slovakian defenseman, who is more of an offensive-minded defenseman. Craig Button compared him to Noah Dobson from the Islanders, who put 51 points up this year. So that's a pretty good comp. But yeah, he's more of a smaller, speedier. Think the rush kind of guy, like break out and rush kind of defenseman. The other thing about Durasek is he's right-handed, which we know the Flyers absolutely love, developing right-handed defensemen. But either way, I mean, if you get either one of those guys, I mean, everyone kind of agrees. If you look around, like all the scouting, all the professional scouts that are out there to put lists out, that these two guys are the top two defensive prospects. The Flyers seem to need. I mean, when you look at what they have in the organization, they're kind of bereft on defense at this point, so I think that's where they're going to go. You could be worse. It could be worse. The problem that I have has nothing to do with the fact that they fell to 5 in what everybody thinks is a 4-forward draft. It's that the way that the NHL has now operating the draft lottery, Russ, is befuddling to me. And maybe I'm just no good at math. But how can it be that you finish in 4th place, or 4th worst record, and then you go into the lottery, and your best odds are getting the 5th pick, which is what they ended up getting. I think there were 55.6% chance that that's what they were going to get. But how is it that your odds are better of getting a pick that is not where you finished? Your best odds should be where you finished. It doesn't have to be over 50%. But that should be your best odds. However the math works, your best odds should be to pick 4th.
To remain where you were.
Right. Now, could you move up? Yes. Could you fall back? Yes, of course. But you should at no point have your best odds be falling backwards, nor should they ever be that high. 55%. That's insanity. And the reason I'm really, again, and I've been arguing with my kid who's a math whiz, and he's telling me that I just don't understand it. He insists that everybody's odds are more than 50% to fall, regardless. But the argument that I'm making is that the NHL is only doing a lottery for 2 spots, and that's the issue. So not only are you doing a lottery for just 2 spots. So you're drawing 16 balls for the first one, 15. I know they don't do ping pong balls. I'm just using that as an example. 16 for the first one, 15 for the second one, right? So the 16 teams, 15 teams, and then that's it. And then you couple that with the fact that teams 12 through 16 who are in the lottery can't win the lottery. So what the hell why are they in there? If they cannot allow to win, they can only go up 10 spaces. That only makes it so that the teams in spots 2, 3, and 4 now have more of a reason to fall backwards because you're letting teams in who can't win.
And I know that you hate when I do this, and there are probably some people who are going to hate this. For comparison, the NBA does a draft lottery. That only includes 14 teams, right? It's the 14 teams that didn't make the playoffs. And they do the lottery for the top 4 spots. And then from 5 through 14 is in reverse order of where they finished. So even if you wanted to say that hypothetically, you don't want the draft lottery to be something where, like, conceptually the 16th team or whatever, or the 14th team could go up and win the lottery, which I think is fair. Like, I do think that there is something kind of sound, maybe a little bit, in that, like, you can only move up 10 spots, and as such, only 1 through 11 or whatever can win the thing. I don't understand why you would only draw for 2 spots. That, to me, is the problem, right? Because all it takes is for one fluke to go jump up into that top 2 for all these other teams to get screwed. Now, you could say that maybe it's an anti-tanking thing, right? Because in theory, if you did have 2 or 3 teams that looked like they were egregiously tanking, which we don't really see as much in the NHL, that, like, all right, we can make sure that at least one of these teams isn't necessarily rewarded with a top 2 pick. Like, we could have a team that tried to field a good squad and had some injuries and, like, things went sideways on them. They might be able to jump into the top 2. Now we have, like, a better team that, like, gets a nice pick, and also we have, like, another example of how it's not a guarantee that finishing with a bad record gets you a guaranteed top 4 spot, like in the NBA. Either way, nonsensical at best. And this is why you and I, we are not the math guys, right? There are probably 7 or 8 people listening right now who have their, like, mental flow charts going, and they've got their mental spreadsheets, and they've got, like, the bar graphs and pie graphs that they wake up and go to sleep every night thinking about. And they're probably thinking right now, well, of course the highest percentage is that they would move down. But I think, like, your point is a sound one in that, like, you could theoretically make sure that a team doesn't move back, or doesn't move back by much, or that, like, the percentage chance of them having to fall back isn't as high. And it's
got to be more that last one. I understand the teams could fall back. I mean, if somebody's going to jump up, somebody has to fall back, right? I mean, there's always
it has to.
It's a cause and effect thing, right? But at the same time, going into it, you shouldn't be favored to fall back. You should be favored to be where you are. That's where I have an issue with the NHL system, is that they put it in place so that teams are favored to suffer for being bad. And that's not – what's the point of a draft? The point of the draft and having the bad teams pick first is to say we want to help bring a more level playing field and get you back being a good team again faster. Well, you're now punishing teams by doing it this way. It just doesn't make any sense. It's typical NHL.
Here's a real question. Because the NHL is more akin to, like, Major League Baseball than it is to the NBA or even the NFL, right? In that you don't necessarily it's not common that, let's say, like, the top 5 picks, but especially, like, even the number 1 pick isn't always going to be a generational talent. Since there typically is a little bit of a learning curve, even for the best players, right? They might have to go play a year in the A or play, or they get in the NHL their rookie year, but they're not like an impact, massive performer. Is there a case to be made to just get rid of the lottery entirely? Like, if hockey is kind of built on this idea of, like, honor and, like, all kinds of, like, the code of respectability and everything, you would think that the league and the other teams would call out, intentional tanking or things of that nature. You would think that, like, of all the sports, this should be the one that you don't see that kind of overt tanking that has happened in the NBA. See the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, shouldn't they be able to say, if we're only going to do the lottery for 2 teams anyway, what are we doing? Why don't we just eliminate it altogether? And then worst team, you get the best pick. It's just how it works.
I guess that would just be going back to, like, really the oldest time when there was no lottery in any sport. I mean, the lottery, keep in mind, the lottery is still sort of kind of relatively new. I mean, the first lottery ever held in any sport was the NBA. It was 1985. That was the Patrick Ewing draft when they said that the envelope was frozen, and that's how they knew to give them to the Knicks, right?
Allegedly.
So it's a great story, man. They did a whole video on it. It's great.
There is.
But so it's really not that old of a concept.
And the NHL didn't institute it till 95. So we're not even at the 30-year mark of the lottery being in existence. There's nothing. it's not like it's a thing that was like one of the foundational elements of the league, right? Like they could just as easily abolish it.
Yeah, they could, but then I think what their concern is that you'll go back to having teams purposely losing just to get into one of those spots, right? So I think that's the issue. So here's what I was thinking, Russ.
Go ahead.
Tell me this isn't, and I don't have the math exactly right. I would be off by maybe a point or two here, percentage point or two here or there, but just roughly, all right? Let's just say you have 16 teams, okay?
Uh-huh.
Split it. So you have two lotteries.
Hold on, let me write this down, and I have a
okay, you write it down.
I have a handy dandy notebook over here, like Steve from Blue's Clues.
Come on, my kids watch that, man. I remember.
Steve, then Joe, and then there's the new guy.
I don't know who the new guy is.
They have a little song now. Come on in, it's Blue's Clues. I have little kids now. So.
Yes, you do.
They
have
don't watch
little
Blue's
kids.
Clues, but it's on the commercials. So anyway.
Yeah. Let's go.
16 teams.
So you have 16 teams. You have two different lotteries: 1 through 8 and 9 through 16. Okay. So this way it gives the teams that just missed the playoffs a chance to still move up, but not ridiculously far all the way to the top. Okay. So then you go and then you break it down so that like team 1 has a 20% chance of winning the lottery. Team 2 is like 18% or whatever, 17.5%, and so forth down, 16, 14, 12, and you just bring it all the way down until it totals 100. I was doing it by twos, 20, 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, but then it got to 104, so I was a little bit off.
You know.
Yeah, so you got to change the math just a hair.
All right, so let's just say number 1 gets 20%, right? And then there is 7 spots to get the remaining 80%. So it's what, 12? No, just under 12%. That'd be 84. All right, so 11 and a half?
Well, 12 and a half. It's 12 and a half. If you're doing one out of 8, 1 out of 8 is 12 and a half. Yeah.
I was going out of the 7. The 7 remaining spots. The 7 remaining spots you have to have 80%, right? Because you'd be doing one.
Yes,
number
correct.
1, yeah. So
yes.
They would need to be like 11-ish%.
Yeah. I mean, you could if you really want to, you can make number 1 21, 22.
Divided by 7 equals
11.4. I had said 11.5. So look at that.
Yeah.
Good.
But
that is why you take math and personal finance and not calc. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So then you do that, right? And you get your number 1 pick, okay? And then do it again for 2 and do it again for 3, okay? And this maybe you don't need to go 4 because you're only using 8 teams, right? So that means that the worst you could fall is 3 spots. Okay. You could fall. The one team is the one. If the number
4 through 8 would be locked in based on where they finish, like it
reverse
order. Okay.
Yes.
So 1 to 3 are the draw. Okay.
Yeah. And 4 through 8 locked in.
Reverse order. Okay.
Okay. So I think by that percentage, if let's just say we give 20% chance. So if he has a 20% chance of winning, if you're the worst team, you have a 20% chance of winning the first pick. You don't get it. Okay. Now you're at 2. You have a 20% chance. Well, probably a slightly better than that because we take a team out. Right, so you probably have like about a 25% chance of getting the second pick. You don't get it. You fall to the third one. Now you're about roughly 30%. I mean, again, these are just rough numbers. If you still don't get it, that's really getting unlucky, okay?
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of bad luck to fall 3 spots to number 4. Not that you have a 55% chance to fall going in.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
So then what happens with 9 to 16?
Same thing. You do the same
reverse order or?
No. You could do a lottery for those guys too.
For number 9. Ooh, okay.
No, but I'm saying that gives the 16 team a chance to move up as well.
Okay.
Right? I mean, okay.
Now that's interesting. A double lottery.
Lottery.
Look at you. You just sat back. You just kind of like lean with it, rock with it. That was like don't dance and just hold my pants in. Little Fat Joe. No.
Yeah, it's a little. But it's kind of like the appetizer for the main course. You can make it an hour-long TV show. Right, you have the 16 to 9.
Money. Yep.
16 to 9. You do that whole thing first. Okay, cool.
Just want to make sure you said 16 9
to 9.
Just
16. Okay. Yeah, 16 to 9. Thank you. And then, how old are you?
It's a family show, Anthony.
Should we start telling fart jokes on the show now?
What's that?
I said, should we start telling fart jokes on this show now?
All right, there we go.
And then 8 to 1. And then 8 to 1. I mean, it just makes more sense.
That's good.
It just makes more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's better than what it is.
If you're listening out there and you have a math background or you're like an actuary or something, or like you can put together a computer model that explains this, we will have you on the show. You can explain the model. We'll be very happy to have you on. Email us, snowthegoalie@gmail.com, please. I think that would be really fun. What the hell else are we going to do here for the next few months, right? We'll just have some math people on. They can explain it. You and I can kind of like stare at them glazed over. Bundy won't show up for that show. Just, oh, boys, I don't know. And then it'll be it. But we're good. It wasn't even a Bundy.
Bundy, we're talking analytics today. See you next week, boys.
That actually is like pretty spot on. What did he say? All right, so we've now solved the NHL draft until a math person comes in and proves either you are brilliant or a moron. So let's move on to the next big topic, and the one that is on everybody's mind right now. Season ticket prices. I'm just kidding. Barry Trotz gets fired by the Islanders, and in maybe one of the funniest public statements, good old Lou comes out. And he's asked, did you talk to the players? Did you talk to anybody else in the organization before you made this decision to move on from Barry Trotz? And he said, no, I didn't need to. Woo! When you thought things here could be a mess from time to time, that is a very telling statement. Is it not, Ant?
Well, I think the telling thing, what's telling to me, and I guess the only thing that would be, and I wrote a whole article about why the Flyers should hire Barry Trotz. I think he would be the best coach for this team. But the one, if you were going to raise a red flag, here's a guy that left Nashville for Washington, quickly won a Stanley Cup, and then left there, went to the Islanders, had some pretty good success there, had one down season that you can really equate to off-ice issues, right? I mean, they were still a plus 500 team, and they had to play the first 6 weeks of the season on the road because their stadium wasn't ready. They had 11 games canceled because of COVID, and they had to reschedule in a condensed schedule already because we originally had the Olympic break. They had games then plugged in there and into March as well. And then they also had COVID problems themselves with like up to 10 guys that missed time with COVID. So, the fact that they were still in a plus 500 team, even though they were never really a contender for a playoff spot, it's a testament to the fact that it was still a pretty good team that just had some unusual circumstances. And yet he's gone there after 3 seasons or 4 seasons with the Islanders. So you got to wonder, like, why did he last for 15 years in Nashville, and now he's looking for his third team in 5 years since then? So you got to wonder if there's something there. But then again, it's Lou is in charge, and if you challenge Lou, you're gonna. I mean, it's like the mafia, man. I mean, it's Lou's gonna. Yes. Yeah.
Gotta get that air trumpet.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so. I mean, I'm not too worried about it, but it does beg the question, like, how do this guy turn this team around quickly and made him a Stanley Cup contender? They lost to the team that won the cup two straight years. To suddenly say the coach is fired after that kind of season, what you went through, that's a tough call for the coach.
I was counting something really quick. Can you take a guess?
I thought I lost your mic.
How many coaches that are currently employed have at least 100 games coached in the NHL right now?
How many? So I'm not gonna try and go through each one because that would be unfair. But if I had to guess, out of 30, there's not 32. There's 28 right now. Is that correct?
What are we talking about?
Detroit, Philadelphia.
Yeah. So go with
the Islanders and
how many
Chicago
coaches with their current teams have coached at least 100 games?
I'll say 8.
That was actually pretty close. It's 11. There are 11 coaches. How many of those coaches have 200 games or more?
3.
No. Okay. You know what? You're a little bit tougher
Low?
than the NHL is. 6 coaches. The 6 are Rod Brindamore, Darryl Sutter, Bruce Cassidy, Bednar, Sullivan, and Cooper.
I forgot about Bruce Cassidy.
So those are the only 6. And if we wanted to fill out the rest, you've got Berube, Egan, Smith, McClellan, and Keith. So, although, let's be honest, if Toronto blows Game 6 and then goes home and blows Game 7, he might not be on that list for much longer.
That's true.
Toronto will probably burn the place to the ground. So
rooting for it, man. Rooting for it.
You're
no city deserves another loss like that than Toronto Maple Leafs fans.
Do you know what the last year was that they won a first round series? I did this because I wrote a thing about the Maple Leafs and Lightning. Don't look it up. Look at me in the eyes. Look me in the eyes. You son of a... I see you. You're trying to find it. You are looking. You are looking. The last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a first round series. Stop looking at your phone.
I'm not. I got to.
The people watching on YouTube, they know.
This is a text, by the way.
You're a fraud. Well, that's going to show up. So
text.
People are gonna freeze that, and because it's going to be on the YouTube. So hopefully it's nothing that I have to clip out. We'd be really pissed if that's the case. Anyway.
Yeah, probably is.
I'm not cutting it out. I'm not cutting it out. So whoever's trust you betrayed, that's on you. That is between you, that person, and your God. Anyway.
You probably do have to cut it out.
I hate you so much sometimes. Okay, so
you'll see when you see it. You'll see why.
See now you're making it worse. Now I really do have to cut it. I'm mad at you. All right. So in a part of the episode that we had to cut from the video, I think we can keep the audio in, but the part that we had to cut from the video, Anthony showed a text that he wasn't supposed to show on the air. I'm very excited to find out what was in it. Anyway, the thing about Toronto is they haven't won a first-round series since 2004. That's insane.
Right before the Flyers knocked them out on the Roenick overtime goal. Yeah.
So when you think about like a tortured town, think about a town that takes hockey as seriously as Toronto does, how live or die they are with their team. 2004. That's insane.
Since they even won a series.
Since they won a first-round series.
I mean, you think it's bad
they've
here.
They've been eliminated, 5 years in a row. 5 years in a row in the first round. If they were to lose this series against Tampa, it'd be 6. Crazy. All right. So we talk about what do you do to turn this team around quickly? Like if the aggressive retool is a real thing, like if that's something you're trying to do. There is certainly a case to be made that Barry Trotz comes in here, and if you don't change the roster at all, they will, but if you don't change the roster at all, you just make minor tweaks, does Barry Trotz make this team a playoff team or at least a playoff bubble team? He does. He has to. It would seem almost inconceivable that if this team can be healthy going into next year, there are a lot of ifs. Ellis, Couturier, Hayes. If they can all report to camp healthy and stay healthy, the team should be at worst a bubble team to make the playoffs. Am I off base?
No, you're right.
There's another side to this that you and I won't agree on, but I think we will. I think we do, but we don't. If you are in the camp of we want this team to be bad next year, we want this team to shed as much salary as possible this offseason, we want to see the young kids play, perhaps grab some potential like reclamation project young players this offseason, hand the keys over to a coach, and then just like let those kids have a season where there are no expectations whatsoever. Hopefully get yourself back in the draft lottery where next year's draft is, this widely heralded one as being the best in however many years. And your goal is to get into that top 2 for next year. Barry Trotz is not a good hire if you don't change the roster because he will make the team too good. You will be in that situation where you're in that, I don't know, like let's say the number 8 spot, the number 9 spot going into the draft lottery, which while you can still make it into the top 2, is far from making it into the top 2. Can we agree on that? That he's a good enough coach that if this roster doesn't change much, he's still too good of a coach for them to be a bottom 2, bottom 3 record team.
Yep.
So therein lies, I think, the problem. If you're a fan that wants everything to get burned to the ground, he's too good. Is there a case that can be made with this team that he is anything but the right hire?
Well, I don't think so.
I don't either.
But
you know that I'm like a Mr. Tear It Down. But I don't know when that guy's available. How do you not go with him? Because there is kind of a flip side, right? Like,
well, my thought there's a lot of things that I think that maybe would change with Barry Trotz as the coach. And I tried to outline it a little bit to show just how much of a difference maker he is in my story where, a lot of people said, oh, well, he stunts skill players. And I used Matthew Barzal as an example. in that story. And, Barzal's, had his rookie year. He put up 85 points in 82 games. It was a really good rookie season. But he was not the greatest defensive player that year. I mean, if you look at the numbers, and this is when it's a time when I say it's okay to go back. I think that there are some analytics that people lean on too much in season, but when you go back and look retrospectively at them, can kind of tell a little bit kind of a story, and you can see progression or regression of a player or a team over time. And when you go back and look at, I used expected goals for and expected goals against. Just as an overall measure, and then high danger chances for and against with that player on the ice at 5-on-5. And he was just mediocre that first year. Was better the second year. The third year, which was if we're not counting this year, we're going to count. We're going to say last year when they went to the conference finals again, was his best year. His point production went down. He was only averaging instead again they played a shortened season, so we can't use the total points. But when he had 85 points in 82 games, it was like 1.04 points per game, and it was down to last season, not this season. Last season was down to 0.81 or 0.82, something like that, whatever it was.
Okay.
But if you look at that drop off, but add in the difference in how few goals they gave up when he was on the ice, how much better of a defensive player he was a plus player. And not plus by plus minus, although even if you use plus minus as a measure, he was a plus 15, which was his best year as a plus minus. So if you're an old school plus minus person, you want to look at that, okay, fine. But the difference in, yes, he was getting less points per game, but while he was on the ice, his team was allowing less shots, less chances, less goals. Less expected goals. And that tells you a lot about the kind of coach that Trotz is. So when you look at the Flyers players who have been so sloppy at 5-on-5, okay? Never mind the penalty kill and power play, which has been disasters as well. But just looking at 5-on-5 and how sloppy they've been at times, if he can fix that in a player of that skill level, Matthew Barzal, imagine what he does with guys who are meant to be more of a 200-foot player, not your high-end skill guy, right? It's supposed to be a guy that's going to make their bones in this league as a guy who plays on both ends of the ice. Imagine how much better defensive players those guys become. And imagine how much better that makes the defense in front of a goalie. And imagine how much better that makes the goalie and how much more confidence the goalie has with a defense playing in front of them like that. Okay, so that people might say that the style is boring, they're not going to score a ton of goals. I don't care if you win. It doesn't matter if it's 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. Those wins are just as cute as 8-6, right? I mean, they just really are. They're the same, they're worth the same. So it doesn't matter. And if you have a team like the Flyers have, which is lacking that high-end talent, but has a lot of that, what you would consider middle-range talent or young talent that is going to probably max out as middle-range talent, okay, then this is exactly the type of coach that you want because he's going to get them to play the right way and they'll be opportunistic and not necessarily try and make plays that they shouldn't make or make the same stupid mistakes that they always make. They'll be very structured. And that's what Trotz does. Go back and look at all those national teams that he took to the playoffs. How many star players did they have there? They didn't really have any. Hey, guys would pop in here and there with a decent season, but it was all about defense and goaltending. Pecorine and all those good defensemen that he had in front of him. That's what the Nashville. And okay, they didn't win anything. They won the Stanley Cup, but they won games in the NHL against very good opposition. Now, West is always good. Remember, this was during the years of Chicago and L.A. winning the Cups 5 years in a row, right? I mean, we're talking about some really good teams out West, and there was Nashville right in the thick of it every year. That's all the coach, man. And so you can turn this around much quicker. I'm not saying it's this 1 year. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit more than 1 year, but can it be 2? Can you become the Islanders? Can you be an Eastern Conference finalist in 23-24, if you hire Barry Trotz as your coach this summer, I don't see why not.
So
and that's to me, that's how important of a coach I think he could be.
So here's the problem with it. If you want to say that there's a problem, a lot of this is based on the premise that he can elevate mediocre talent to meet the moment, which is good because, the Flyers have a lot of mediocre talent. And if people are worried about him stymieing, really dynamic, exceptional players, well, also good news, we don't have those. So that's two positives in the Barry Trotz column. There is a question, I think, about the development side of things, right? Because you conceptually have open roster spots to be able to give young players adequate playing time. And I think maybe if there is a positive to go by this, like Trotz is going to implement a system and put in a level of accountability that's going to be good for young players. It's going to probably get them more NHL ready than anybody who's coached the team in recent memories. So to that end, okay, like you can certainly make a case that Barry Trotz from a development standpoint might be the best. In terms of like, is he going to develop dynamic talent? I don't know. I don't want to say probably not. Maybe not. Is he going to create a culture and install a system that's going to make these young players accountable to one another and hopefully put together a team that actually performs hard on the ice and, gives it up and kind of like matches the mentality of the city? Yeah. I don't know which way you go. I really don't. Like, I could totally see the logic behind get the good coach, let him kind of mold the minds of the younger kids, and at the same time hold the vets accountable. You've gotten rid of a lot of the vets that historically people have wanted to see you move on from if you believe that there was an accountability issue with, quote-unquote, the core. So if this guy comes in and we still see a lot of the same issues, I don't know what the hell you do at that point, Ant. Like, at that point, saying to gut the team doesn't even begin to say it, right? Because if this team were to hire Trotz and had a lot of those same mental lapses, a lot of that same like inability to get started from the opening puck drop, a lot of those systemic issues that I think we've all kind of seen for 6 years. Well, Claude Giroux's gone. Jake Voracek is gone. Shane Gostisbehere is gone. Like, there aren't that many guys left who were part of the core left. It's Sean Couturier, right? Like, that's it.
Yes. Here's what I'm going to say, Russ, and this is why I think it makes more sense to go with Trotz than any other coach. I think it's fair to say that next year's roster, remember last year, I came out on this show at this time and said Chuck's going to change about 7 or 8 players, right? That was what I said, and ended up being 9. He actually went one further than my prediction. This year, I'm going to tell you that I believe that, let's see, 10, 15, 16 of the 20 players on the roster, and this is the top 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, 2 goalies, okay? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there could be depth pieces that come from outside the organization, but I'm going to say that 16 of 20 are currently in the organization. So at most, you're adding 4 players to this team. In that vein, since you're not having that much of a turnover, and you're going to come back next season with guys that are already here, who better than to help them develop that next level? All guys who've played in the NHL this season. We're not talking about rookies who've never played here. There's some younger players, of course, who've only got, Noah Cates, like, for example, he's got 20 games under his belt. Okay, he's going to be on the team in my mind.
Yeah.
But so we're not talking about that. But I don't think that there's any rookie player that's going to come in next year and just take a spot on this roster. Who better than Barry Trotz to get the most out of this group? I mean, that's how I look at it, And I think that you can. I think you can still make moves. I think there are players. Look, we could talk about this ad nauseum, and we're going to do it all the way up until July, whatever. But the draft is the 7th, so the week leading into that is usually when trades start happening, and
Little Johnny Hackey? Going a little Johnny Hackey over here?
We start hearing about all the wild rumors about who's going to sign free agency. But I mean, let's just say, for example, you find someone to take on part of JVR's contract. You're going to pay part of it, right? You're going to probably pay $2 million, but somebody pays $5 million. And let's say that you do make a trade for a player that includes a Travis Konechny, for example, right? To try and maybe get a top line player.
Okay.
The name I'll throw at you, not that this is anything that I've heard, but I'll just throw at you. I'll say Mark Scheifele. Okay. Who Winnipeg probably can't keep him because they got to pay all their other players. So maybe that's one where you trade off Scheifele for Konechny kind of deal. To keep the salaries about where it needs to be. Okay. So let's say that you do that. And then you go out and you sign one free agent, like mid-range free agent on the left wing, because that's where I think that's where they're weakest right now. How about a guy like Valeri Nichushkin? Okay, nice player.
Okay.
Right? Not great, but decent player, right? Okay,
fits in here.
I'm just throwing this together, so now all of a sudden you got a group of all right, let's look at that top line. Farabee, Scheifele, Atkinson, I guess, okay? With another line of...
hold on. No, that doesn't work.
Why not? Farabee can play the left. Scheifele's the center. Atkinson would be on the right. That's your best offensive.
So
it's your best offensive line. That could be your...
You putting Couturier on the second line?
Yeah, I mean, however you want to look at it.
Okay.
I mean, I think Couturier is
That's
your
why I
best...
said it doesn't work, because...
Couturier is your best two-way center, obviously. But I don't think you're playing Couturier with skill players on either side. I shouldn't say that. You're not playing Couturier with guys who are not also defensively responsible. I think that's what's hurt Couturier in the past. So I think you put Couturier. Let's say you put I mentioned Nichushkin. It could be anybody on that left wing, but let's just say that kind of player, and Couturier and Owen Tippett as the second line. You like that? Pretty good line, right?
It's interesting.
Pretty decent line. And then you go to a third line. What if your third line has Kevin Hayes centering? I know, right? We're paying him to be a second line center. He's now your third line center. But you're centering Lawton and Wade Allison. Is that a bad third line, though? Russ is banging his head, but is that a bad third line? Is my question.
No, it's not.
Not, right? And then your fourth line is obviously they're
You paid the guy to be your second center. He's got to be a third center.
Yeah.
Everybody saw it coming.
Okay. Sorry. I'm good.
That's right. And then your fourth line is your fourth line. I mean, you could go whatever. And there's so many routes you can go with that. But I mean, Noah Cates is, I think, definitely on it. And then the question, who's the center in that line? Is it Tanner Laczynski? Is it another veteran you bring in at a low money contract? Is it Brown again? Patrick Brown, does he come back again in that role? I mean, he's under contract for another year.
Yeah.
You also got Zach McEwen. He's not going to play center, but I mean, they seem to like him.
Nate Thompson will be available.
Yeah. But I mean, that's kind of so there's your lines. And are they bad? I don't particularly think so.
All right, do this again one more time. I'm gonna put it on my handy dandy notebook.
Yeah, your handy dandy notebook.
Yep, you got Farabee.
I went Farabee, Scheifele, Atkinson, Nichushkin, Couturier, Tippett, Lawton, Hayes, Allison.
Hold on, Hayes, Allison. And then you got Cates.
And then, I said whoever for center. I mean, you
question
put
mark, Nate Thompson. And then the
I
other...
said Laczynski and McEwen.
Okay.
That's your four lines.
All right, so that's what that looks like, folks. All right.
Then defensive pairings. Defensive pairing. Again, this is assuming everybody's healthy.
Okay.
You still got Provorov Ellis.
No, you don't, but okay. Provorov Ellis. Okay.
Sanheim Ristolainen. And then you have
York.
and then I think you got to go
Free
out
agent?
and get like. Well, yeah, but probably. But when I say that, Russ, I don't want you to go crazy, because the free agent defenseman you're bringing in is you're looking for a third pair defenseman who's going to come really cheap, like that $1 million just over $1 million.
Basement. I heard there's a guy, Keith Yandel, will be available this offseason and won't cost a lot. Bring him in, okay?
But no,
Okay,
the funny thing is that that's. You make a joke about it, and I'm not saying Keith Yandel's the answer. That's not what I'm saying. But it's not going to be. It's not going to be someone far better than that. Like, I mean, it's going to be that type of player. How the guy I like.
Games would it take Barry Trotz to impale Keith Yandel at center ice on a hockey stick?
The guy I like in that role, who's going to be a free agent and has played a lot this year with Tampa, is Jan Ruda. Mm-hmm. He's making 1.3 this year, so like that would be that guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to look elsewhere, I mean, there's other guys that might be a little bit more affordable.
Okay, just wait until he ends up.
It could be Justin Braun again, for God's sake.
Well, just wait until Ristolainen ends up on that third pair, and York is up with Sanheim, and then we have Kevin Hayes playing third line and Ristolainen playing third pair. That'll be something. That leads us, by the way, Ant, to the issue in net, which has been, I think,
There's
our third
an issue in net.
Our third, it is a goalie controversy. Rhea, there's a goalie controversy, Rhea. Okay. So there's Carter Hart.
Yes.
And there's this nice young man, Fedotov,
Ivan Fedotov, yes,
who is on his way over. And I want you to look at my depth chart here. Do you see that, Ant?
Oh, yes. Look at this.
Explain to the people who are listening and not watching on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel. What did I do
you
here?
You have Fedotov listed ahead of Hart.
I do.
Which you're nuts, but that's okay.
I love chaos. We know I love chaos.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what's been really interesting? This is the critical thing. This kind of gives you an idea of how screwed up the Flyers fan base is. Okay,
that's the kind of stuff you find on the Philadelphia Flyers fan group in Facebook.
There you go. So follow me on this for a second. I put a tweet out right when they announced that Fedotov had been signed, and I said, "Imagine Flyers Twitter when Fedotov comes in and wins the starting job, right? Just hypothetical. Think about the season Carter Hart just had. Mm-hmm. Think about the fact that Carter Hart largely was a solid goalie in net for a really bad team. He arguably kept them in a lot more games than they had any right to be in. He kept the final score respectable in losses that should have been blowouts, okay? So Carter Hart, the kid that came up through your system, the kid who got brought up at a very young age, the kid who bounced back, I think we would both agree, this season, despite the team in front of him being a mix of, dog crap and garbage and a couple of gems, but not really. Carter Hart, in theory, across the entire fan base, should be kind of held in, not reverence, but should be held in very high esteem. And yet, many of the people who responded to that tweet said, why is it if and not when? There are people right now, Ant, a large number of the people who replied, which obviously is a subset of a subset of a subset, but they think that Fedotov is going to win the starting job, okay? I don't know. I don't have feelings, okay? I didn't watch the KHL this year. Okay, so I don't have an opinion on Fedotov, okay? I'll watch Fedotov when he comes into camp, okay? We'll have a better idea of what he is. And when he gets some time in the NHL next year as the backup, we'll get an idea. And it would be really funny if Fedotov is like a lights-out backup goalie, and then we really do get to have a goalie controversy. That would be hilarious and also scary. Good if Hart is good. Horrible if Hart struggles out of the gate and Fedotov is lights out. Then we're going to have ourselves one hell of a conversation in the fall. But Fedotov is good, and Fedotov, in theory, could be a guy who pushes Hart at least a little bit, right? Like, it's not a pushover. This isn't like some journeyman goalie that you found on the scrap heap. it could be good conceptually to have somebody that can push your starter, right?
I agree. I do agree. I do agree with that. I do think that, unlike Martin Jones this year, who knew he was going to be the backup, unlike Brian Elliott the last couple of years, who knew he was going to be Carter Hart's backup, Ivan Fedotov comes in. Again, he knows he's Carter Hart's backup, but it's his first year in the league. He wants to establish himself.
Yep.
He wants to make a name for himself. So in that regard, he feels like, all right, I'm just coming into this league. At some point, I'm going to be the man, and I got to start showing it now. And that pushes Carter Hart a little bit. And I think that's good. That's a definite good thing to have happen. I never quite understood, and this was, we remember last year I said the same thing. I didn't quite understand spending money on a backup goalie who was not very good to begin with in Martin Jones.
The only one.
Right? I mean, it was like the one move of Chuck's that I just didn't like at all. I would have rather had, if you're going to do that, I would have rather they had Holtby. But my preference was you have these young goalies in tow. And, last year, you had Sandstrom and Ustimenko. Now, their goalies had a bunch of injuries last year, too. I mean, they were in and out of the lineup in the AHL. It was nuts. It was insanity down there, too. But nevertheless, I would have rather you gone that route, the backup goalie. And if it didn't work, then go find a veteran. Trade for a veteran that's playing in the AHL or whatever, and bring them in and let them finish out the season or whatever the case might be. But you don't. You should have seen you should have looked to see what you had there, and they didn't. And not to say that in retrospect, now when you look at it, Sandstrom is he's just a guy. He played a couple games for them, looked okay, and there's not anything he looked bad, but he's just a guy, and he's not going to stick here. He's going to my feeling is he's going back to play over in Europe next year. I don't think you'll see Felix Sandstrom sign with the Flyers or with any other team in the NHL. Ustimenko had too many injuries this year, way too many injuries this year, barely played. If he comes back, he's got to get healthy. Yeah. And that's the thing with him. And then the other kid that they like is Urson, but he's only 20 years old. He's only playing in Europe. He's not even close to coming over here. So Fedotov is the one that who's playing in the KHL, which is probably the second best league in the world. Played great, played really well at the Olympics against some good competition, really good competition. Yep. The only question is a matter of adjustment to the smaller rink, which, yes, angles are different, but you ask goalies who've done it, they'll tell you that it's easier to adjust down than it is to adjust out. Like it's harder for North American goalies to go over to Europe and play on the bigger rink than it is for European goalies to come over here and play on the smaller rink. So, I mean, I don't know, it gets a short adjustment period, and then he's going to say, all right, when I play, I'm going to show you that I belong in the lineup ahead of Carter Hart. Now, I don't believe that he does yet, but we'll have to see. And if he plays that way, if he plays like his hair's on fire and he steals a game or two and really gets the juices flowing for the team, and it's going to be up to Carter to respond and do things the right way and keep it going. But that's a good, healthy competition to have in goal. I like it. I like where that spot is at right now with the Flyers, and I would not go get a veteran. I would go with Fedotov and see what happens.
There is a flip side to this.
Isn't there always?
There have been concerns in the past, not speculation. Informed information. There have been questions in the past about Carter Hart's ability to mentally bounce back and his ability and willingness to be challenged. And so there is a scenario, and I'm not saying that it's the likely scenario, okay? I'm not saying this is like the Flyers having a higher than a not chance of moving back in the draft kind of chance, but I'm merely suggesting that there is a chance that if it goes into a, quote-unquote open competition, if Barry Trotz gets brought in and says publicly, this will be an open competition for every spot on this roster, and when inevitably Mike Sealski comes in and says, well, does that mean the goalie as well? And Barry Trotz goes, every spot on this team is an open competition. There is a chance that through the preseason and through camp, Fedotov really impresses and Hart doesn't. And there is a question and a concern about does Trotz really roll out the kid who's never played in the league before? Or does he put Hart out there, and if Hart struggles, does this go well? Does it go poorly? I think you can make that case for just about any spot on the roster, though, right? Like, if you have somebody who comes in with, like, some kind of, decently held standing across the league or has been drafted high, and there's somebody else who could theoretically compete for their job, players, typically can either raise their game or they can freak out and they can crater, and then you have some issues. That has happened in this city quite a bit the last 5 or 6 years. It has happened here in the last couple of years. It could create a little bit of a situation. Hopefully it doesn't. You would hope that if you think that you've identified the kid who's supposed to be your franchise netminder going forward, that he would welcome the competition and that he will raise his game, and that Fedotov will subsequently raise his game as well, and it won't be an issue. But there is the human element to this, and there have been questions in the past about, does Hart really want to get challenged in that way? We shall see. By the way, I'm not saying that Carter Hart is Carson Wentz, because that's the next place that people will try to draw a comparison. Not saying that. But maybe.
I will say this.
Go ahead.
I don't think they would be making this move if they didn't want to challenge Carter a little bit to see how he responds. Like, if they wanted to just continue to Ben Simmons, Carter Hart, like the Sixers did with Ben Simmons as a comparison, if they want to continue to do that, they would go out and get some mediocre veteran guy for like no money to come in, and who knows who's going to be the backup and play 20 games, and that's it.
Yep.
By giving it to a prospect who had a really good year last year, that's kind of saying a little bit something more. It's kind of saying, Carter, you're up, buddy. It's your turn to take that next step. Like, nice bounce back. We're glad you didn't completely melt down and we lost you forever.
Yep.
Nice comeback, but you're going to have to be a big part of turning this around from here, beyond what you did already. And if that's not good enough, we got a guy.
By the way, if he were to crumble, if he were like just to mentally break down, like he couldn't handle this, you don't want that guy to be your goaltender. You don't.
Yeah.
That's the truth. Now, the weird thing that I've seen people put out that I do not under any circumstances understand, I do not condone, I do not support, is this notion that Fedotov comes in camp and looks like a freaking stud, right? Like, lights out #1. And that you go, you know what we could do? We don't have a lot of assets, but we could trade Carter Hart and get a massive haul back. I don't understand that line of thinking at all.
No, not at all.
I do not see that. I do not see a scenario where that works out. The only way that could conceivably happen is if Fedotov really does like win the job, Hart's barely playing, and he pitches a fit, which I don't think will happen. But the notion that like, hey, Fedotov comes in, looks like Shesterkin, and then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well we can just bail. We can just bail on Carter Hart. I don't see it.
Are you trying to get on the camera?
Now he's going to be on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel, youtube.com/crossingbroad. All right. And I think we've touched on all the major things. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about with your team, your town, your Philadelphia Flyers? Did we?
No, I think we're good
anything?
I think we're good for right now.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Okay.
I did. You know what I did do? I'll say this.
What did you do?
I did a nice thing. I did a guest bartending appearance for Snyder Hockey. Out at the Great American Pub in Wayne. They were raising money out there with some of the alumni. Flyers alumni were out there. Some other media members were there. It was me, Glenn Macnow, Sam Carchidi, Al Morganti were the media guys. Lou Nolan was present, and some of the alums like Bernie and Joe Watson and Terry Karkner, Eddie Hospodar, Boxcar Hospodar. So yeah, it was good. It was nice. It was a nice event, and I did some guest bartending And I got to be honest with you. No knock on any of my media colleagues or any of the Flyers alumni, but they paled in comparison to me behind the bar. Neil Little was the other guy behind the bar too. He did some bar work, but the bartenders there were kind of impressed.
Wow.
Like, you've done this before, haven't you? I'm like, yeah, I may have.
So I never read 1-star reviews on the show, but I feel like this 1-star review actually was right, given the fact that you just gave yourself 2, 3, 10 pats on the back.
Yeah.
There's a 1-star review we got a few weeks ago from Sean Couturier's Tooth Gap. I don't think it's actually Sean Couturier. I think it's just somebody who's an idiot.
Yeah.
And they left a 1-star review saying that you and me and Bundy were idiots. And part of it, because I don't read the whole thing, part of it says the whole podcast is a circle jerk of mediocre white men circle jerking each other. That's redundant, but whatever. For being masters of the universe. Now, I'm not saying this was a circle jerk, if you will. This was you. You were the circle. But you were just promoting your own bartending skills. You're like the human centipede or something, but yourself. I don't know how that works. There's an image that the poor people who lasted to the end of the episode did not want in their head. I look forward to at least 1 or 2 of our followers on Twitter sending that picture over and getting kicked off of Twitter forever.
You do not
sending a DM.
Do not send that photo. And you know who I'm talking to.
That person should DM it to you.
Do not send that photo.
That's gonna be something to see. Wow. Yep. This show went to hell in a handbasket real fast. So anyway, follow Ant on Twitter at AntSanPhilly. You can follow me on Twitter at JoyOnBroad. Follow our dear colleague Bundy at CTarian6. He'll be doing stuff pretty soon here with Ice Wars International, which is going to be a lot of fun. I think it's very exciting. We're excited for him. It's going to be a lot of fun. The guy's been glowing nonstop, so this is going to be good. Make sure you follow the show on Twitter at SnowTheGoalie, Facebook.com/SnowTheGoalie. We're also on Instagram, SnowTheGoalie. We're going to start doing some stuff, I think, with Instagram here over the summer. I think we're going to. Mm-hmm. Okay. And, of course, every episode of the show now is over on the Crossing Broad YouTube channel, youtube.com/CrossingBroad. There's a Snow the Goalie playlist, so you can watch all of the episodes. You can also go back into some of the archived interviews that we've done in the past. Many of those people are no longer with the organization. They include the likes of we had Scott Gordon and Aline Vigneault and Paul Holmgren's technically sort of around. Bob Clark's still, kind of sort of around. We had Jordan Wheel years ago. I don't think his video's up. That's fine. Derek Brassard's no longer here. Matt Niskanen's no longer here. The Snow the Goalie curse might be real again, Ant. It might be. Farabee's still here, though. Konechny's still here.
Farabee, Konechny.
Sanheim has done the show.
He was the original.
He was
the original.
He's still here.
Yeah, and Scott Lawton.
Lawton is still here. Okay, so
yeah,
you know what? Maybe it's not the full curse. We're okay. Yeah, but you can go back and watch some of those archived episodes. You can go back into the podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you find podcasts. You can find Snow the Goalie Flyers podcast. Go back in the archives. You can find all of the wonderful interviews that we've done over the years.
Chuck Fletcher,
still here.
Still here.
Still here. Still here. Still here. All right, we'll be back next week with a new episode of Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Oh, by the way, leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. 5-star review. 5-star rating is great. We love that. We appreciate it. 5-star review. Tell us what you think of Ant. That can be your assignment. Make him smile. Or don't. I don't know. But leave a 5-star review there. Thank you so much. We'll read it on the show. #blessed. Talk to you next week. Bow, bow, bow.